It's April 2026 and I'm on day 4 of my cycle. I took a little break from filming while I was menstruating and in the luteal phase, but now I'm almost through that and into the follicular phase, and I'm starting to feel more energized. And I worked on this painting over the weekend, and actually I think this painting was featured in my last video, where I thought that I was going to add some collage elements to it. And then I realized, so I've had this idea for a while about tulips, wilting tulips. And so I realized that it was the perfect size and shape canvas. Like, it was like the perfect length and width and for my vision, which I've been holding for a few months now. And I wanted to do one of my techniques is using modeling paste, and so I use modeling paste to create texture. I build it up and then I collage around it and paint around it, and the raised up part of the painting gets to show through the paper, and it's sort of like an anchor to the piece. And this area here, you can see, just before we began recording, I was mixing some paint colors. This is my palette. I don't know if you can see it from that camera, but the above camera. So I mixed dark blue, light blue, a darker red, a lighter red, green. There's some beiges over here. This is raw sienna, this is raw umber, this is black. So I was just playing around with what color I wanted to go over the textured part. And I've been thinking about it the last couple days because it needed some time to dry, because there's so many areas of chunky, I keep wanting to say modeling paste, but it's actually drywall compound. But before I was using drywall compound, I was using modeling paste, and the two kind of interchange. But the drywall compound is a lot cheaper. You can get it at the hardware store, whereas the modeling paste is from the art store, and you get a teeny tiny little, like this, little jar, whereas with the drywall compound you get like a huge tub for pretty much the same price. So anyone who's an artist, there's a little tidbit to save money. Yeah, so I was playing around with the different colors to see, I want to do this dark blue over top of the tulips. You can kind of tell it's a bit of a mess right now, just because of how I had to, when I apply it with a palette knife, and then I scrape away the areas that I don't, like, I just shape it. It's kind of like, I imagine it's kind of like bakers when they're decorating a cake. Can you tell I work in film? Dress the set, dress the cake. When I'm not painting, I do work in film. I do props and set deck. Um, I got a little off topic. Oh yeah, so I mixed up some paint colors, and this was sort of my testing ground, and this one here, because I thought maybe I wanted to do the stems in green and the flowers in red. But for the overall piece, once I get the paper in there and I start peeling layers and the paints in there, it's like a lot going on. So I decided against the green stems with the red flowers because I feel like it'll just be too busy. And I always have the best intentions to keep it muted, like a muted palette with the paper. But it doesn't really turn out that way because I end up like using there's just so many layers, and then when I peel things away, I like what is there, so it's like, oh, it's not really muted. So I try. My intention with this one is to have the paper and the images to be mostly black and white and some sienna, raw sienna, or yeah, beiges. And actually, I just remembered. So I have this image. This was the image that inspired, I don't know if you can see it from up above because of the glossiness. But this was the image that inspired the color palette. So there's like dark blues and sand, and they're on camels, and there's like a little hint of red there. So I'm going to use this image as the color palette scheme for the whole painting. And what I'm going to do today, you can see here I have like red outlining the flowers, and I'm going to do that, and then I'm also going to do the dark blue. And I did a light blue too, but what I think I'll do is layer the light blue over top of the dark blue. And it'll look kind of crazy at first, but in the grand scheme of it, like the overall painting, I know it's gonna look amazing because this is my technique that I've honed over years. And the fact that there's like all these different layers to it, you can get like different colors kind of peeking through, which anyone who follows my work knows that I love things that show up the more you look at it. Like it just like appears over time the more you study the painting. So I do that with paper, and I do that with colors, and I do that with texture. So yeah, I'm just going to begin, and we'll see what I feel like talking about today. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the red and just begin outlining the flowers. The tulips came from, I found a photo that I really liked of wilting tulips, and I sketched them out over the weekend. And it was sort of like a line drawing out of charcoal. And then I drew the line drawing onto the canvas. And then I went in with the modeling paste and a palette knife. And then I just waited because I had to wait for it all to dry. But I think the red overall, in the end, is going to be just this subtle hint that outlines everything. you'll see. I always, part of my thing that I do is when people see my work and they're like, oh, I like it. And I'm like, well, don't get attached to it, because, you know, this is just a phase. It's just a stage of the work. And I usually say to JD, like, it's just a layer. It's not finished yet. He's like, I know. You always say that. But I love thinking about my work. Like, I've been in the realm of planning what I'm gonna do next for this in my mind. And I love when I'm in that stage of making, because it just sort of consumes my thoughts. Like, if I'm not in the studio, I am thinking about the painting and wondering where I'm going to go next with it, and I can visualize and play around with different color schemes to see, you know, oh, I think this will look good. And sometimes if I can't visualize it, I will use a photo and manipulate it in the photo apps on my phone. Just with, you know, you can like edit things with a little marker in the photo. Sometimes I'll do that to just see, you know, does this area want this thing? It's always the painting guiding me, and I have to remind myself that, you know, it's not going to end up like this, and I can always paint over it. This part is actually really crucial in my opinion, because it doesn't just inform the end result, but the acrylic paint actually adds a layer of reinforcement to the drywall compound or the modeling paste. If you've been watching any of my other videos, I talk about working on canvas versus working on board, and how eventually once I've exhausted all my canvases in the studio, I'm going to be working on board. And I think that'll solve a lot of my problems, because as you can see as I'm working, the canvas is malleable. So if I push it, it moves. And I think the drywall compound is just, you know, it's meant for drywall. It's meant to not be, it's just meant to be sedentary, and it'll crack if it's if there's any movement. And the paper too, it's, you know, I can glue it down as well as I think I've done, but if there's movement in the canvas, then the paper can lift up. So I think that'll solve a lot of my issues. It's not even really an issue, it's just I've had to pivot. Like, I've had to adapt and understand, like, experiment with different techniques. Just in a bad thing, because I feel like I've kind of mastered this technique now. And it's all my own, which I really love that. There are many, many different steps involved. And so that's where thinking about it when I'm at home really comes in handy, because it's like, well, I could do this step next, but is there something else I need to do first? actually thought about it this morning. I was, contemplating what I wanted to talk about today, and I realized that I've never spoken about why I introduce my videos with the day I'm at in my cycle. And I thought that could be something I talk about, because it's such a big part of my life now and who I am as a woman. Like, it's just, it dictates my entire schedule, I would say, which sounds limiting, but that's not the purpose of cycle tracking at all. It's actually liberating. And I started learning about it, I forget what year, it's probably 2013 or 2014. And I was reading a book about it. I forget what book. I can't even tell you who the author is, because I've read so many books on the menstrual cycle since then. But it really opened my eyes to how different women are from men, and I feel like that's sort of an unpopular opinion in our society today. Like, we're taught that we're all the same, and women can do everything men can do, and I'm not knocking that at all. I'm just saying that we have different superpowers, and I really feel that the only way to unlock those superpowers as a woman is through the menstrual cycle. Because our whole society is structured on the 9 to 5 and the Monday to Friday, and a 9 to 5 cycle is a masculine cycle. Men and their hormones, their testosterone, is a daily cycle. Like, they follow the sun. And you can pretty much track it day by day, with a few exceptions. Like, it depends. We're all human. We're all affected by the moon as well. But you can pretty much know that at a specific time of the day, like, you wake up, you have energy in the morning. I'm talking about men here. And then by 4 o'clock in the afternoon, it's like a crash, and time to go home and rest, and you have dinner and go to bed and wake up and do it all over again. And women are not designed that way. We follow the moon, not the sun. And so our cycle is not 24 hours like a man's. It's 28 days, because that's the moon cycle. And so it can feel really kind of all over the place if you're not aware of that. At least it did for me, because I was never taught to track my cycle, to realize that, in the follicular phase, I will feel different than the luteal phase. Like really different. So I was just living my life like thinking that, you know, some weeks were really good and some weeks were really challenging, and I was crazy. Like I was the crazy one. Like why do I have energy? Why did I have energy last week? Like almost infinite energy, and then this week I feel like death and I feel like crying at the drop of a hat, and then it's like, you know, I get my bleed, and within two to 3 days I feel normal again. Whatever I deemed normal. Normal was like, you know, I was comparing all my phases to how I was feeling while I was ovulating, because that's when I feel energized, and that's when I feel my best at that time. I feel sexy and I feel beautiful and I feel like I can take on the whole world, and I can, you know, there have been times where I've been working and painting within the same week, and it's like, oh, I have so much energy. I wake up in the morning and it's like time to go. So it's not the ovulation phase that's the issue, because I shouldn't say issue. There is no issue with the menstrual cycle. It's just my interpretation of it. But it's easier for me to keep up in the world, to contribute to the 9 to 5 cycle when I am ovulating, or even in the follicular cycle. I feel like the follicular phase, I feel like I can keep up, and there's energy building, there's energy mounting, there are ideas flowing. It's less emotional. I feel it's more outward energy, I would say, more yang energy. And I would get to this point where once I started tracking my cycle, day 20, it was like, oh, it's day 20. Day 20 is the day that I switch into the luteal phase. And the luteal phase for me has been the most challenging to accept myself in that phase, because I feel grumpy, I feel emotional, I feel all over the place. There's no energy to do anything. I want to just lay on the couch and complain about everything. Like I did a video last week in my luteal phase, and I was like, I don't know where this is going, but like we'll just see. And I'm sure it was like I was pretty grumpy. I don't know. I haven't watched it yet. But it's taken me this long. Like, when did I say I started tracking my cycle? It was 2013 or 2014. And now we're in 2026. So that's over 10 years. That's what, like 12, 13 years of learning about myself through the different phases of my cycle. And only now am I just starting to accept that version of me, because of the conditioning, because of society, because of expectations, because I was told to keep up. And I felt like there was something wrong with me when I couldn't. And then you add in human design, and it's like a whole other layer, a whole other ball game. because then you have different energy types, and like finding out that I was a projector and I'm not actually designed to be doing. It's like, yeah, I do have energy at certain times of my cycle, but what is the best use of that energy? And I found that when I was very active during the luteal phase, which is pre-menstruation, the week before I started bleeding, if I was too active during that phase, if I was trying to keep up, if I wasn't resting when I was tired, if I was berating myself for my emotions, for crying, for, you know, or just trying to hold everything in, hold it all together, which I did a lot because I didn't know. I was like, you know, the story was, what's wrong with me? Like, why am I crazy? Why am I crazy this week, but last week I was fine? And learning, just learning about the different phases of the cycle. They all have positives to it. Like in the luteal phase, I can wrap things up and get shit done. Like it's not a time for starting new projects. The new projects are right now. Like I'm on day 4, so I'm technically still in menstruation because I'm still bleeding. But in 2 to 3 days, I will be in the follicular cycle, and follicular is like spring. And springtime is a time for newness and new ideas and getting new projects off the ground. And I love this time. It's like coming out of the cave. Everything just feels fresh. It feels like there's potential, there's possibility. And then from that, after that week, I will enter into ovulation. And ovulation is also great because there's energy, there's, you know, it's what they would say is the summer phase. And it's just like projects and checking things off and having fun. And it's almost like, yeah, it's exactly like summer. Like in my mind, it's like, this is great. Like I can take on anything, I can do anything. And I have to be careful what I commit to at that time because I feel like I can do anything. So if somebody's like inviting me to an event, I really have to, well, now I will check my calendar and be like, where will I be at in my cycle? And if it aligns with my follicular or ovulation phase, then I can say, yeah, sure, I can commit to that. But if I'm not sure, or, you know, depending on when my bleed comes, it's like, well, I don't know if I can commit to that. So a lot of the time now I will wait and I'll give an answer closer to the date. I don't know how this is looking from above, but like I said, it's just a phase. Probably looks pretty janky, actually. We'll see. I'll just keep going with it. I have a vision, and the vision will pay off. I know it. I know it will. So then the week of the luteal phase, it would be considered autumn, and you're getting ready for winter, for hibernation. It's like when the leaves are changing colors and falling to the ground, and the superpowers in that phase are finishing off the projects that you started in the spring phase and continued in the summer phase, and then you get to finish them off and check things off. And it's a great time for like data analysis, or like I did my taxes because I just thought, I know I have to organize stuff, and I know I have to focus on columns and numbers and charts, and it's like way easier for me to do that in the luteal phase. And if I rest in that phase, then I have a pretty great, and saying great is like a huge accomplishment for me. That's a huge success. I have a pretty great, easy period. Very little pain, very little fatigue, very little cravings, very little PMS. Because I advocate for my body and I listen to what my body needs at that time. But it never used to be like that. I would push myself, I would try to overwork, I would shame myself for my emotions, I would hold in my emotions. It was like I said, what's wrong with me? And I think from that space of being wrong, like making my body wrong, making myself wrong for having an experience that's really normal. 50% of the population goes through a cycle, goes through a menstrual cycle. And yet we don't talk about it in society. It's like a taboo subject. Like, ooh, women have periods. Like, come on. I used to have incredibly painful periods. I was diagnosed as a teenager with endometriosis. I was put on hormones, birth control. I was told that I would probably need surgery to remove, endometriosis is a buildup of blood in different areas, like the fallopian tubes, and it's like the blood that's not easily coming out. It's building up in different areas of your reproductive organs. And what saved me, because I've never had surgery, I'm not on birth control anymore. It didn't last very long. It was awful. I just was not myself. But what really changed everything was rest. And allowing myself to rest when I was tired, and to not make myself wrong for that. And to end relationships where the people around me were shaming me for resting at that time. And there were people in my life who were doing that. They were expecting me to continue you know, as if life were the same. Like, just keep going. Like, why can't you do this? But I see now that they were a reflection of me. I was telling myself that, so I was getting that externally. Everybody you meet is just a mirror. Everybody in your world is just a mirror for you and your inner thoughts. And maybe some people will think it's like gross that I'm talking about this on YouTube, but fuck those people, because I am literally not for them. I want to talk about things, everyday things that are normal. And I don't understand, like, it's so strange to me that there are everyday things that we go through. Like I said, 50% of the population has a period. Why don't we talk about that? It makes no sense to me. It's like so strange. And that's where shame builds up, because if you're not talking about it, you're like, oh, there's something wrong. And I really do believe that shame is the driving force behind period pain. And there were times when I was a teenager where I ended up in the hospital because the pain was so bad that, you know, Tylenol 3s couldn't take the pain away. And I would go there and they would put me on morphine and like just insane shit. And all I needed to do, which I didn't know at the time, but all I needed to do was rest and to not run away from the pain. I stopped taking Advil and Tylenol when I was, I want to say 2019, 2020. So that was 6 years ago. I haven't had a single painkiller since then. And when I stopped running from the pain and started asking my body, what do you need? It was like the war that I was raging. The war that I was creating with my body went away, because this is what I've learned about the body. The body is intelligent, yes. Extremely intelligent. Even more intelligent than we're told. Like, so freaking smart. It knows everything. And we think that we know better by medicating it and feeding it certain foods. Usually it comes down to diet, and people don't want to hear that because then it requires change. And it's like, well, I can't give up my chocolate, I can't give up my alcohol. I don't know, maybe that sounds judgy, but like, it really is diet. It all comes down to diet. I don't know where I was going with that. Oh, the intelligence of the body, yes. I really do believe that our bodies, they are for us. They are trying to communicate with us in every moment. And we think when we have pain that there's something wrong. But nothing's wrong. It's the body just trying to get your attention and say, you need to do something different. I'm requiring something different. Stop doing this or start doing this. And every body is different. So they all require different things. I mean, we're human, so we require adequate sleep. Women actually need 10 hours a night, minimum. All the studies that they did on sleep where, people said 8 hours, you need 8 hours of sleep. Yeah, that's for a man. Men need 8 hours of sleep, minimum. Women need 10, minimum. It's just the way that our hormones are. So yes, we all require sleep. We all require fresh water. We all require clean air. We all require safety in our environment. But when it comes down to diet and resting, like taking time, and that's all purely individual. And you really have to experiment with it to see what works for you. And I think that when we're taking pain medication and numbing with alcohol and marijuana, like I've been there, I've done that. And it's not helpful because you're blocking the body's ability to communicate. Because you're afraid of pain. But the pain is where the answer lies. It's inside that pain. And you can't get there. You can't get the answer. You won't hear the answer if you're running from the pain. And I've gotten to a point now, because I've experienced I've experienced pain in my life. My body has experienced a lot of pain. And I'm at this point now where I remind myself, you breathe and you relax, try to relax, and you remind yourself that it's just a sensation. And it's an experience. We are a soul in a body having a human experience, and pain is part of that experience. We might not like it, we might not want it, but it is something that we agreed to by coming here to this earth, because you can't be in a body and not experience all of it. And I really wasn't planning on talking about pain today, but that is what learning about my menstrual cycle unlocked for me, is peace and relief from the pain. I used to be terrified. I was terrified of getting my period. Every month I dreaded it. I was worried. I was stocking up on Advil and Tylenol and just dreading it. Like, why do I have to go through this? This sucks. Like, my body hates me. I don't understand. Those were things that I told myself. And the only thing that changed it was listening. And the only way I was able to listen was to get off the pain medication, was to stop numbing. And really, that's the only thing that got me through my mom's death, too. Because we talk about pain and we think about it in the physical body, but pain also exists in the energetic body and the emotional body. And the only way out is through. And you don't have to do it right away. Like, I have friends who are still in the thick of grief from losing parents. And that's not a time to be, you know, forging ahead with what I'm talking about. It really comes later when you have accepted the fact that they're gone. And then you can listen, like, and ask yourself, what do I need? What does my body need? And have the courage to give it to yourself. And I'm sure there are people listening to this that will not agree, or be triggered, or be angry, but that's my experience. This has been my experience, and I healed myself. I healed my body from endometriosis. And I did it without medical intervention, and I did it without painkillers. Actually, the painkillers were the thing preventing me from connecting to myself. I don't know. How is this looking? I just realized that I'm talking about the menstrual cycle and periods, and I'm using this like deep blood red color. I didn't actually even use the deepest red that I have. I mixed like this maroon color and do some there. Which that'll actually dry darker than this, but I'm kind of loving it. Like the color with the gray. And there's paint on my pants. Whatever. They're just clothes. I actually have a pair of pants specific for painting, but then I was like, oh, I've worn these on camera too often. So I'll wear my other jeans today. But I can be clumsy, as I just demonstrated. Whatever. I'm okay with that. These are actually my favorite jeans too. But I'll dab them. I'll dab them afterwards. I'll probably partially come out. But I'm accepting of what is. Paint on my pants. I mean, nothing says artist like paint on your clothes. This is one of those paintings that I feel like I've bitten off a little more than I can chew. I think maybe just because of the size. Like, it's taking me a long time to even just outline it. But that's okay. Like, doing the flower motif took me a good, I would say, 3 hours. It was probably 3 hours. It doesn't usually take me that long. But I had somewhat of a plan, but not, I was sort of like adding flowers and leaves as I went. It wasn't just, my sketch was not complete when I drew it on the canvas. So I was sort of making it up as I went. I feel like I do that. So maybe, I don't know, maybe this was like kind of an intense talk. Sometimes I don't know. To me, it's like the only reason to talk is to get through the layers of conditioning. I guess that's why I'm doing this, is like I come to the videos having, sometimes I have an idea of what I want to talk about, but most of the time I don't. And that's part of my authority in human design, the self-projectedness. It comes from the G center, which is where our soul is housed. According to human design, our soul lives in the magnetic monopole, which is in the G center. And so when I speak, it comes directly from the soul, and I'm trying to allow it and to not judge it. But I do have fear around showing up and saying the wrong thing. I do. Even though I can tell myself, what's wrong? Like, it's just a construct. There is no wrong. And maybe what I speak is exactly what somebody else needed to hear. And maybe somebody else it's triggering as fuck, but that's part of my challenge, is to be okay with that. It's like I'm showing up as me, sharing my story, and I cannot control how my story is perceived. And that also doesn't mean that whoever's listening to me has to take what I say verbatim. It doesn't have to be gospel, it doesn't have to be true. Parts of it can be true for you. That's kind of how I show up when I listen to other people. It's like, yeah, I believe some of what they say, and then I leave other parts where I'm like, no, that doesn't really resonate. I call it cherry picking. And I do it with everything. I do it with religion. I do it with learning about diet. I do it with the body. I do it with conspiracy theories. Like, it's like, take what resonates and leave the rest. If what I said today doesn't resonate, then I don't know, maybe you'll like my next video. Maybe you won't like any of my videos, but that's not my problem. I have to disconnect from outcome and just keep showing up as me.